There is a way to keep pests out of your garden for good. No sprays, no poisons, nothing off a store shelf, and it works so well your plants will end up healthier than your neighbors who sprays every single weekend. I know that sounds too good to be true. I thought so too, for about 30 years. Then I saw it with my own eyes on the other side of the world, and today I am going to show you exactly how it is done. But first, you know the morning I am talking about. You walk out to the garden on a beautiful July morning, coffee in your hand, feeling good about life, and then you see it. Your tomato leaves chewed to lace, a line of aphids marching up your pepper stems like they pay the rent, and that squash plant you babied all the way from seed, something got to it overnight. So what do? The same thing I did for 20-some years. You grab a bottle of something off the shelf, you soak everything down, and you hope for the best. Maybe it works for a week, maybe 2. But the pests come back. They always come back. And every season it feels like you are fighting the same war with the same weapons, and somehow you are still losing ground. Here is what changed it for me. A few years back, I spent some real time in the Japanese countryside, the small family kitchen gardens they call kate-saien, tucked in beside old farmhouses, and the little terraced plots worked by people who have grown their food the same way for centuries, without a single drop of synthetic pesticide. Not one. And their plants put mine to shame. Fuller, darker green, barely a nibble on them. I stood there in front of a row of eggplants so clean and glossy they looked polished, and I thought to myself, what do these folks know that I have missed for 3 decades? Today I am going to walk you through exactly what they do and how you can start doing it in your own backyard this season. And stick around to the end, because I will show you a dead simple Japanese trick for protecting young transplants that I have never once seen in an American gardening book. I will be honest with you, when I first started learning how these Japanese gardeners handle pests, part of me was skeptical. I have been gardening since I was in my late 20s. I have read the books, tried the neem oil, the diatomaceous earth, the organic sprays, and I figured if there were a better way, I would have stumbled onto it by now. But what I realized over there is that I had been thinking about pest control completely backward my whole life. I was always reacting to problems after they showed up. These gardeners do not do that. They build the garden so that most pest problems never develop in the first place. That one shift in thinking changed everything for me, and it did not cost me a single dollar in product. At the root of Japanese farming, there is an idea called Shizen no-ho natural farming. A farmer named Masanobu Fukuoka spent his whole life on it, and the heart of it is simple. Stop fighting nature and start cooperating with it. There is a companion word, kyosei, which means living together, coexistence. Now, I am not here to preach philosophy at you, but here is why this matters for your garden. When you spray a pesticide, even an organic one, you override the whole system. You kill the aphids, sure, but you also kill the ladybugs, the lacewings, the parasitic wasps, and the ground beetles, every creature that was already out there working your garden for free. These gardeners figured out, through centuries of patient watching, what soil scientists and entomologists are only now confirming. If you build a garden that supports the whole web of life, the web takes care of the pests for you. You do not have to fight nature when you let nature do the fighting. Here is how it works, step by step. Step 1. Pest control starts in the soil, not on the leaves. This is where most of us get it wrong, myself included. For a very long time, we see a bug eating a plant, so we treat the plant. But the Japanese approach says that if your soil is right, your plants will be strong enough to shrug off moderate pest pressure on their own. And here is the science behind it. Soil that is rich in organic matter and alive with microbes grows plants with stronger cell walls and higher levels of their own natural defensive compounds. University research here in the States, out of places like Penn State and Cornell, has shown that plants grown in biologically active, compost-amended soil are measurably more resistant to both pests and disease. The plants are literally tougher. It is chemistry, not folklore. So here is what to do. Every spring, before you plant a thing, spread 2 to 3 inches of well-aged compost over your beds and work it into the top 4 to 6 inches of soil. The Japanese have their own beautiful version of this. They ferment kitchen scraps with rice bran and beneficial microbes into something called bokashi, and they work in kuntan rice husk charcoal. They're traditional form of what we now call biochar, which holds water and gives soil microbes a place to live. They rake fallen leaves into feuillodo, leaf mold, and let it rot down into black gold. You do not need the exact ingredients. Good homemade compost or a quality bagged compost will do fine. What matters is the habit. Do not do this once and expect miracles. Build your soil every single year, season after season. After 2 or 3 years, you will notice your plants are visibly more vigorous and take far less damage overall. Not zero, nature does not work that way, but noticeably less. If you are up in zones 3 through 5 with a short season, get your compost down as soon as the ground is workable, 3 to 4 weeks before your last frost, so the soil biology has time to wake up. Down in zones 7 through 9, you can lay it in late winter and get an even earlier jump. Step 2. Never plant a crop alone. This is where the Japanese garden really stops looking like ours. And it is the part that surprised me most. Most American gardens are planted in tidy single-crop rows, tomatoes here, beans there, squash way over there. It looks organized and it makes picking easy, but to a pest, a long row of one crop is an all-you-can-eat buffet with a neon sign pointing the way. The reason is that most garden pests find their target by smell. Aphids, cabbage moths, hornworms, cucumber beetles, they all navigate by the chemical signals their host plants give off. So when you surround those plants with strong-smelling companions, you create what entomologists call olfactory confusion. The pests simply cannot find your tomato because the shiso and the marigolds are drowning out the signal. Here is the Japanese playbook. Tuck shiso, that big fragrant perilla leaf you have had with sushi, in among your tomatoes and peppers. One plant for every 3 or 4, about 8 to 10 inches from the base. It throws off aphids and hornworms, and it is wonderful in the kitchen besides. Now here is the one that surprised me. The Japanese plant negi, their long green onion, right in the same planting hole as their eggplant and cucumber seedlings. The onion roots carry microbes that fight the soil-borne diseases that wilt those crops, and the smell confuses the beetles. If you cannot find negi, garlic chives, naria, or any scallion will do the same work. Around the borders of your beds, plant small French marigolds about 10 to 12 inches apart. Their roots release a compound that suppresses root knot nematodes, and that is confirmed by real agricultural research, not just tradition. And a few pyrethrum chrysanthemums earn their keep too, the very same daisy the Japanese mosquito coil is made from. If you garden in a hot climate, zones 8 or 9, swap any cilantro for summer savory, which will not bolt the moment the heat hits. Step 3. Invite the good bugs, do not just kill the bad ones. I overlooked this for most of my gardening life, and I think most of us do. A healthy garden is not one with no insects. It is one with the right insects. A single ladybug eats up to 50 aphids in a day. One lacewing larva eats 200 aphids in its short life. Parasitic wasps lay their eggs inside hornworms and cabbage worms and kill them from the inside out. Ground beetles patrol the soil at night, eating slugs and cutworms. In Japan, the praying mantis, the kamakiri, is treated almost like a guardian of the garden. And the dragonflies Japan was once called the Dragonfly Islands sweep the air clean of flying pests all summer long. These are your allies, and the trick is to keep them around. The simplest way is to plant what is called an insectary strip, even just a 2-foot band along one edge of your garden, planted thick with the flowers and herbs beneficial insects feed on. Sweet alyssum up front because it stays low and blooms all season, then yarrow and dill alternating behind it about a foot apart, and a few fennel plants at the back if you have the room. The key is continuous bloom from spring through fall, so the good bugs always have a reason to stay. Within a few weeks, that strip will be humming with hoverflies, lacewings, and ladybugs, and once they settle in, they will patrol your whole garden. The Japanese have done this at the scale of the whole landscape for 1,000 years. It is the heart of Satoyama, where the cultivated land and the wild edge live side by side. They deliberately leave the grassy buns between the rice paddies, flowering and a little untidy, so the frogs and spiders and beetles always have a home. So leave a corner of your own yard a little wild, a patch of clover, an unmowed strip along the fence, a pile of stones or old logs. That is not laziness. That is habitat. A perfectly bare, manicured garden is a no-vacancy sign for the very creatures you want. If you are in zones 4 through 6 where the beneficials are slow to build up in spring, you can buy a release of ladybugs to jumpstart things but get your flowering habitat in first, or they will fly off looking for food. I learned that the hard way my first year. Bought a bag of ladybugs, let them go, and they were gone by morning. You have to give them a reason to stay. Step 4. Walk your garden every single morning. This is the most old-fashioned step, and that is exactly why it works. There is an old saying among Japanese farmers that the crops grow best to the sound of the farmer's footsteps. Every morning, early, before the heat sets in, you walk your garden slowly. You are not just admiring your tomatoes. You are turning over leaves, checking the undersides of the squash foliage, running your eye along every stem. And when you find a pest, you pick it off by hand and drop it in a bucket of soapy water. I know it sounds too simple to matter, but here is why it is so powerful. Most serious damage does not come from 1 or 2 bugs. It comes from a small population that was allowed to explode unchecked. A single hornworm strips a whole branch in 48 hours. A pair of squash bugs lays hundreds of eggs in a week. By the time you see the damage and run for the spray bottle, you are already behind. The morning walk catches it while it is still small. 2 hornworms on Monday become 0 hornworms, instead of 20 by Friday. Give yourself 15 or 20 minutes. Carry a bucket half full of water with a squirt of dish soap. For tomatoes, hunt for hornworms along the top leaves and stems. They hide well, so look for their dark droppings on the leaves below as the giveaway. For squash and cucumbers, flip the leaves and look for clusters of little bronze eggs. Scrape them off with your thumbnail now and save yourself a real headache later. For cabbage, broccoli, and kale, watch for small green caterpillars and the white butterflies fluttering around laying eggs. After a couple of seasons, this becomes second nature, and honestly, it became my favorite part of the day, quiet time in the garden before the world wakes up. If you are gardening on a larger scale, a quarter acre or more, you will not catch it all by hand, so use lightweight floating row covers over your young squash and brassicas as a physical barrier against egg-laying moths. Just remember to pull the covers once the plants flower so the bees can get to the blossoms. Step 5. Trap cropping. Send the pests to the wrong address. This one is clever in a way that makes you smile once you get it. Instead of trying to keep pests out of the garden entirely, you invite them in on purpose, but you direct them somewhere you do not care about. You plant something the pest likes even better than your main crop, out on the edges, and it draws them away. A row of mustard greens or radishes planted a couple of feet in front of your eggplant and brassicas will pull the flea beetles onto the decoy and leave your real crop clean. A ring of nasturtiums or marigolds around the outside gathers the aphids at the border, and a couple of blue Hubbard squash in the far corners of the garden act like a magnet for squash bugs and vine borers, pulling them off your main squash entirely. You are not trying to save the decoy. You are using it as bait. And here is the best part: once those trap plants are loaded with aphids, you let the ladybugs and lacewings from your insectary strip come over and feast. That is the whole system working together, hands off, all season long. Step 6. When you need extra help, make it in your kitchen. This is the only step that involves making something, and even then it takes about 10 minutes. For the times when pest pressure is heavier than usual, the Japanese reach for what is already in the kitchen and the shed. Here is the mix I keep coming back to. Take 4 or 5 cloves of garlic and 2 hot red peppers togarashi, or any hot pepper you have, and chop them up. Steep them overnight in a quart of warm water, at least 12 hours. In the morning, strain it through a cloth into a spray bottle and add a teaspoon of plain dish soap, which helps the spray stick and breaks down the waxy coat on soft-bodied bugs like aphids. And here is the Japanese touch. Add a small splash of mocha sakueki, wood vinegar, which you can find sold for organic gardens. It deters insects and feeds the soil life at the same time. Spray the undersides of the leaves, early morning or evening. Never in the midday sun or the soap can scorch the leaves. One application holds pests off for about 5 to 7 days. Reapply after heavy rain. Now I want to be straight with you. This does not kill on contact the way a synthetic poison does. It deters. It makes your plant smell and taste unpleasant so the pests move along. Combined with everything else we have covered, That is almost always plenty. But if you are expecting one spray to wipe out an infestation overnight, that is not what this is. It is part of a system, not a magic bullet. Let me share a few patterns I used to get wrong. The conventional way, for longer than I would like to admit. No judgment, I did every one of these myself. The first is reaching for a spray at the first sight of a single bug. A few aphids is not an emergency. It is food for the ladybugs that are on their way. Spray it off and you have starved the predators that would have kept it in check. The second is planting in long monoculture rows because it looks neat, which is just a billboard for every cabbage moth in the county. The third is keeping the garden too clean, with bare soil between every row, which evicts the ground beetles and spiders that hunt for you at night. And the fourth is treating soil health and pest control as two different subjects. They are the same subject. Weak soil grows weak plants, and weak plants attract pests. Strong soil grows strong plants, and strong plants can take a few nibbles without missing a beat. Now here is the technique I promised you, the one I have never seen in an American garden book. When the Japanese set out a tender young seedling, they stand a little cylinder around it. They call it an andon, after the old paper lanterns it resembles. Traditionally it is paper or straw, but you can make one in 30 seconds from a cut-down milk carton, a cardboard tube, or a ring of folded newspaper pushed about an inch into the soil and standing 2 or 3 inches above it. That little collar does 3 quiet things. First, it blocks the cutworms, the larvae that crawl along the soil at night and saw straight through the stems of young transplants. They kill more seedlings than most gardeners ever realize, and the collar stops them cold. Second, it shelters the seedling from wind and cold while it is at its most fragile. And third, the cardboard or paper breaks down on its own in 4 to 6 weeks, right about the time the stem has hardened off and nothing can bite through it anymore. No plastic, no waste, no chemical, just a piece of cardboard, and the understanding that all you really have to do is protect a young plant through its most vulnerable window. I started standing these collars around my transplants 3 seasons ago, and I went from losing 5 to 8 seedlings every spring to losing almost none. So that is the Japanese secret to keeping pests out of your garden without a single bottle of poison. Build your soil every year so your plants can defend themselves. Plant companions that confuse the pests and call in the allies. Make habitat for the insects that do the hard work for free. Walk your garden every morning and catch trouble while it is small. Use trap crops to send the pests to an address you do not care about. Mix a simple kitchen spray for the heavy days, and stand an andon collar around every young transplant. Do these things and, within a couple of seasons, you will be standing in a garden that mostly takes care of itself, and your plants will look healthier than the ones your neighbor sprays every weekend. If any of this changed how you think about your garden, tell me down in the comments what you are going to try first, and let me know how it goes. I read every one. And if you want more deep dives into how older cultures have been growing food, far longer and far wiser than most of us, hit subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Thanks for spending this time with me today. I will see you in the next one.